Voters decide an unprecedented election in Colorado. For the first time in at least 100 years, there are 3 open congressional seats. Representatives Ken Buck and Doug Lamborn retired. Lauren Boebert switched from Congressional District 3 to Congressional District 4. The 4th Congressional District and is the most Republican district in the state. Boebert, a 2-term U.S. representative and former restaurant owner, is running against Democrat Trisha Calvarese, who is a Colorado native and worked for the AFL-CIO. In an effort to help you, the voters, make informed decisions, your political reporter Sean Boyd did in-depth interviews with both candidates.
And joining me today is Trisha Calvarese, the Democratic candidate in Congressional District 4. Thank you for joining me. I want to start out with farming, since it is such a big industry in CD4. How would you address the undocumented farm workers as well as the H-2A visa program?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, Sean, thank you so much for inviting me to be here. Now, I wish this had been a debate with Representative Lauren Boebert, because I think that voters should absolutely have an opportunity to compare and contrast both of us. So thank you for having me, and I'm really disappointed she's not here. Farming is absolutely critical. Food is not optional. You know, and I've been talking to farmers all across our district. They feel disrespected, overlooked, and left behind. And they're definitely having worker shortages. So I want to make it easier for them across the board. And that includes the policies that are going to support the workforce for our farmers. We certainly need a path to citizenship for people who have been here, who've been here for decades. You know, their families have been connected. Get them into the system. Get those folks into the system. We also need protection for our immigrant workers who are in places like our meatpacking facilities. We're hearing actually heinous accusations from UFCW about human trafficking through TikTok by management, and where they're even building things like company housing, and they're charging these migrant workers. We have moved on, right, from the days of company housing, from having to pay your company rent too. So that's unacceptable. That is not American. We do need comprehensive immigration reform, though, certainly.
And we have reported on that.
Yes,
what you're talking about with the TikTok. Another big issue for farmers is opening up more foreign markets. How would you do that?
Oh, my goodness. I was shocked to find this out. We used to export more food to the world than anybody. That was our agriculture fed the world. That reversed, really because of tariff policies. We are now importing more food than we are exporting. That has to stop. Now, one reason why, you know, I was on a farm the other day, and this farmer was kind of going through our different costs. We take a lot of chemicals that are manufactured in foreign countries. They're very expensive. We should manufacture them here. So I'm going to do whatever it takes so that we can be exporting our food again.
Do you support the current farm bill that passed out of the House Ag Committee and cut nearly $30 billion from the SNAP program?
That was unconscionable. I mean, we need to make sure that everybody in Colorado 4 can eat, right? We don't want hungry kids. And in fact, I was just in Fort Morgan the other day. There is a remarkable program. It's one of the first in the country that was feeding kids in rural communities during the summers even. We cannot let our kids go hungry. So I didn't like that it didn't support SNAP, and we need to make sure that that's funded, whether that's a different bill. But we need a farm bill. It expires today. I mean, and it's having a bottom line impact on people. Like I've met farmers who say, I need that crop insurance yesterday. These are real livelihoods. And I just want to point out, Lauren Boebert just last week voted to defund the government again. So we need to get serious on getting a farm bill passed.
Right, the last one has expired, yeah, it was 5 years ago when they passed that.
That's right.
What can you do to prevent water from leaving rural areas and being shifted to urban areas?
Excellent question. That is one of the major issues, of course, all throughout Colorado 4 is the balance of water for our growers and then for development. I want to point to, it's called the Platte Valley Water Partnership. It is a phenomenal plan where what they're trying to do is take what's called junior water, so that's water that in excess time we can capture. And we can use that on farms. And they're looking at more sustainable, cyclical ways where we're making sure our growers need to have that water. Because here's the thing, once you lose your farmland, that's it. Yeah. That's it. It's so hard to get back. So looking at what's already working and help complement those plans. And there's, you know, excellent folks on the ground. These are experts. I just met with Bill Long, who's done some excellent work with the Arkansas Valley River Conduit. So talking to the experts, hearing what's working, and then what's the plan for, you know, the next 5 and 10 years? We need to be really thinking ahead of this problem.
So do you think any form of energy, given oil and gas and wind energy really are big industries in CD4, do you think any form of energy should receive tax breaks, incentives?
Well, here's the interesting thing. We know that the auto market wanted to move towards EVs anyway, right? And for every dollar that we've put down in the Inflation Reduction Act of public money, we're seeing $5 and $6 follow from the private sector. So that's where the industries are going anyway. We're not there yet. We don't have the infrastructure. So of course we're going to still have to produce oil and gas. And especially when you look at the geopolitics of it, our LNG production has helped our allies. So I'm an all of the above, I'm an all of the above person in terms of our energy strategy while we work to draw down.
Do you support the Inflation Reduction Act? Are there any provisions in it that you would want to repeal?
I absolutely love the Inflation Reduction Act. I think there's a ton of potential in there. Carbon capture sequestration, we are getting a demonstration project in Colorado for one of the first in world history. That is so incredible. I want to see that continue, and I want to make sure there's pathways to good, well-paying, family-supporting jobs in those industries.
I have reported on that as well.
Yes.
What additional climate policies would you support? And are there any that you would eliminate?
I think that we really need to think of climate and food. They go hand in hand. So whatever policies are going to help our farmers intensify what they're already doing and to help them be more efficient and effective with it, especially in terms of water conservation and how they're producing their crops.
Right. Farmers have led a lot on the climate policies, for sure.
That's right.
Let's talk about your budget priorities. Democrats often call for tax increases on corporations and the wealthy, which they define as anyone Biden administration defines as anyone making over $400,000. Do you support that, or what are your top policies for negotiating a new tax framework when the 2017 tax cuts expire?
Okay, I love this question. So companies were incentivized to offshore. So there are hidden profits on the order of a magnitude of trillions of dollars hidden in offshore accounts. Let's bring that home. Let's look at that. Let's account for that. And I think that should really lead any deficit debt negotiation or discussions.
You don't support keeping the 2017 tax cuts?
Well, they're very complex, right? Like it's the whole full tax. So if there's pieces in there that have helped businesses, we can keep those. Absolutely, we can keep them. Okay. But you know what I'm hearing though, Sean, all across the board, the middle class needs a tax break. They need breaks. They have been treading water for a long, long time. So whether that's a child tax credit, credits to be able to start small businesses. I mean, and we got to do something about getting into farming. So a corn cutter costs $1 million. $1 million. And that's a mortgage, right? But unlike a mortgage where you have 30 years to pay it off, you have to pay it off in 5. That's not sustainable. That's not workable. People are not going into farming, and our farmers are, the average age is 58. They're retiring. So we need to bolster the middle class and get people into farming.
What is your plan to maintain Social Security and Medicare, both of which are expected to go solvent, according to the trustees, in the next decade?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I don't think we should raise the retirement age, and we're not going to cut those benefits. I mean, people paid into that, and they were promised those benefits. So scrap the cap on the wealthiest. I think Elon Musk can pay maybe a little bit more into Social Security to make it solvent for the rest of us.
What about means testing?
Possibly, potentially. I know that's been used in the past. I'd look into it.
You mentioned the retirement age should not be raised for Social Security. Do you support work requirements for federal assistance programs?
Not necessarily, because the people who need them are often they're disabled or there's other problems that prevent it. I mean, and I think that's something, you talk about all across Colorado for of just having people's health care be bound to their employment is so tough, and it continues to just be an incredible challenge.
Do you support a constitutional balanced budget amendment?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. I think that each negotiation is its own separate thing, and that you could really kind of play some games with that. So not really, no.
What about earmarks? Congress has returned to earmarks.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, I just want to point to Lauren Boebert, one specific earmark, right? She voted against the bipartisan, what was it called? The infrastructure bill. Okay, where that had billions of dollars for Colorado water. She voted against it. She earmarked one water project. It was like a $15 million project, put it in an omnibus, and then she voted against it. I am against earmarks. You can play games. It's parliamentary maneuvering. It's not honest, it's not forthright, and it lets people like Lauren Boebert play games with our water. So no.
Cost of living is obviously a huge issue. across the country, but here in Colorado too. Do you believe anti-price gouging policies would lower grocery prices, or what steps would you take to make sure that inflation doesn't shoot up again?
Absolutely. I actually just talked to a Republican farmer, and the way he framed it is it's their price fixing. This is a cartel. It's a conglomerate of the three big players who have price fixed. And we see that they're being enabled by AI algorithms in order to do so. We have to break that up. I believe in competition. I believe in free markets, local economic development. And in order to do that, we got to break up the monopolies at the top. And
the three big players being
JBS, and Carville, and then the other one in Colorado 4, the big meat.
Okay.
So yeah, but we're seeing it all across though, right? You see it in telecom. You see it in, the retailers. It's all across the different industries.
So price gouging might be a way of
absolutely.
addressing this.
Well, and even in terms of housing, where you have investors like Redfin, right, buying up property just to drive up the prices so that they can profit.
Healthcare is another huge cost of living issue. How should the government curb the growth of healthcare spending programs while still maintaining quality?
Well, I think the Inflation Reduction Act was absolutely critical. And, I'll share a personal story. When my dad was first diagnosed with a terminal illness, I ended up getting 4 years of life with him beyond that diagnosis because his union retiree benefits covered life-extending medication. Now, Lauren Boebert voted on the side of pharmaceutical companies to keep those prices high and out of reach of seniors. But the Inflation Reduction Act gave us the power to negotiate on that drug and many others. But let me say this, though, Sean. We know that insulin has been capped at 35 for seniors, and we're going to expand that. There's an insulin shortage now. I just heard about it in Sterling. Why on earth in the year 2024 are we not manufacturing our own pharmaceuticals right here in Colorado 4?
I was going to ask you about that. We are outsourcing a lot of our essential pharmaceuticals like insulin to China. Here in Colorado, we've got what's known as a Drug Affordability Review Board. The thinking is big pharma is sort of like utilities, and we need to get involved in that. Should there be, do you think, a similar board at the federal level?
That's interesting, yes, so that they can start exploring things like a return on our investment, right? Keep in mind the research and development that's leading to these incredible breakthroughs that we have right now that are literally saving lives. We paid for it. We paid into it. We should get a return on that investment. So a board is a very interesting idea to begin exploring some possibilities for that.
What about Medicare for all? Do you support that?
I support having nobody in Colorado 4 go without the care they need. And you know what? I meet women all the time on the Eastern Plains. These are hardworking women. They have raised families. They have raised their communities. They have created so much around them, and they're not counted in the formal economy. And I don't think that those folks should go without a safety net in their final years, period. And right now the system's not working. My own personal experience, when my mom was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer last year, looking at the options, there were none. And I'm in Highlands Ranch, there's no beds, there's nowhere to put her, right? And even if there were, I would have to liquidate all my assets for her to spend a night or, a couple weeks in a facility. We need to reimagine how we're doing care. So much of the burden is being shifted to the home. How are we supporting that? Right? I'll tell you, and it's all connected because you want to make sure you have housing and that your health care providers can live nearby. Because I can tell you, you don't want your care provider coming from Denver when you're waiting for morphine for a dying loved one.
So health care being a right, is Medicare for all the answer?
Not necessarily, right? We need the full, we need to be able to pass it. We need to live in the reality of it. So if it's not called that, let's figure it out. But this is something that's universal and across the board. We need to fix our care system.
I know you've talked about rural hospitals before. About half of them in the red in Colorado. Should the federal government help, and if so, how?
Here's the beauty. Melissa Memorial Hospital in Holyoke. I had the honor of touring it. This is a self-organized hospital. This is not top-down. These are folks who got together and said, we are going to take care of our community. And it's an amazing facility. All kinds of programs and benefits. I asked, what do you need? They took me to the ambulance bay and they said, we have 2. This is a mobile unit. It serves people all across the plains. We're still getting 911 calls that we are turning down right now. That could change with 1 ambulance. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, how much is an ambulance? It's just $300,000. So one $300,000 ambulance is literally going to save lives on the Eastern Plains at the Melissa Memorial Hospital. And I'll tell you what, Sean, the American Rescue Plan Act has funding for them. right? And I believe it expires in December. So I would be honored to work with them, to work with the county, whatever it takes to get what they need. That's the role of government, is to hear of the self-organizing people who are already taking care of themselves what they need, how I can be a champion for what's already working to go get them their ambulance.
Talk about some workplace issues. Do you think that the minimum wage should be increased, and what about the tipped minimum wage?
The tipped minimum wage is so disturbing. Absolutely. It's, what is it, $2? Yeah. Yes, we should abolish that. And yeah, it's time to raise the minimum wage. Absolutely.
What about programs like workplace policies like paid sick days, paid family and medical leave? What role do you think the federal government should play in
Critical.
those?
I mean, we're at 2024. This is a different economy. This is not your grandfather's economy. And with the technological changes we've seen, we need to adapt and we need to adjust, right? Especially, women my age, we're working, we're raising our kids, and we're taking care of the elderly. And especially post-COVID, when millions of people have long hauler effects, it is long overdue.
I know you support the PRO Act, which makes it easier for workers to join unions, so we won't get into that so much. Do you think we should maintain, reduce, increase our current level of tariffs and trade restrictions? You talked a little bit about that with regard to farming.
Yeah, I think we need to be very, very strategic about it. I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all. I think with critical technology, we made mistakes with chips, right, where we were exporting that technology and it has benefited China to a gross disadvantage to the United States. So I think in terms of any tech we're developing here, we need to be very careful in how we're exporting it. I think the best balance is to make sure we're building our manufacturing capability. We should be building the EV future here. We should be building the solar panels, the windmills, the quantum AI, all of it. Let's build it here. That's the best way to go about it.
We also talked a little bit about immigration with regard to farming, but what would be your immigration priorities overall in terms of securing the border, merit-based visa program? Is it finish the wall, stay in Mexico?
Yeah, so there's an emergency for STEM workers. We need to expedite H-1B visas immediately. And these are with our partners from India, folks who are highly skilled in STEM. We need those pathways clear immediately. I mean, that's the House, the Committee on the Science, the Select Chinese Communist Party Committee has made that recommendation as an absolute urgency. So step one. Number two, I just want to point to the bipartisan border bill, right, that could have passed as a bipartisan consensus. Lauren Boebert blew it up because she was told to from an outside influence. I'm going to work with my partners across the aisle to secure the border, listen to the people who are doing the job to secure our border, Customs and Border Patrol, saying, hey, we need more resources here, and making sure they have that, and fighting for a pathway to citizenship. Because you know what? It hurts everybody when you're competing against people who can be exploited because of their immigration status.
On abortion, and with Roe v. Wade being overturned, would you support taxpayer funding for abortion?
So let me tell you a story. The year before I was born, my dad was the city attorney, so family was living in rural Sterling, and mom had an ectopic pregnancy. So thank goodness there was a surgeon there that night that she went to the ER, because there was not always. He saved her life and made mine possible the next year. Any kind of restrictions on choice, on medical decisions like we're seeing in Texas right now, women are dying from that same need for a procedure. So I don't want to put restrictions on that at all, on women's health care and what's already working.
In terms of payment or in terms of the government?
That's right.
What about gun control? Would you support any new gun control? And if so, what would be your priorities at the federal level?
Well, I mean, responsible gun ownership is part of our Western heritage. We believe in the Second Amendment and responsible ownership. So I don't think it's such a huge burden to put a gun lock on your gun, right? And that would prevent the leading cause of death.
Lock.
Yeah, gun lock. Go ahead and put a gun lock on your gun to prevent the leading cause of death in children.
Okay. Foreign policy. What do you think the role of the U.S. should be in achieving peace in the Middle East?
Very complicated, right? I think that we need to work with our partners on solving some of the big major issues that are going to affect all of us. So whether that's exchanges on technology or how we're rising to the challenge of climate, of looking at what those different areas are doing to their huge challenges. I'll also say it keeps me up at night sometimes thinking about the way we left Afghanistan and the women who are there, who, after so much decades of getting support from NGOs and just how we abandoned the women specifically. in Afghanistan. I think about that a lot, and I think that needs to be a priority of however we can engage or just let them know they're not alone, like some kind of support for the women of Afghanistan.
What about Israelis, Palestinians? Two-state solution? Do you think the United States should be involved in that? And if so, what's our role?
Yeah, absolutely, two-state solution. Multiple things can be true at the same time. Israel has a right to exist. The Palestinian people have a right to exist. Israel has the right to defend itself, and the Palestinian women and children have a right to live their life peacefully. We understand that Israel has been an ally, historically, of course, and that Netanyahu is a strongman. So that we should continue using, any channel or any avenue we have to continue to pressure change from within. So, and I will say there's a very hopeful trade movement in Israel.
Do you support aid for Ukraine, and where do you draw the line with that?
Oh my goodness, yes. Absolutely. That is fundamental to the democratic world order. 100, and I am a person of Polish descent. So I understand when Russia's invasion, this is not just Cold War, this is imperial. These are imperial ambitions.
You're talking about aid, boots on the ground, yes?
Aid.
Okay.
I mean, give them as much. Yeah, we want to prevent boots on the ground.
Right.
And I don't know what army in Europe, right, is ready to defend against Putin. So the Ukrainians have stepped up. They have done an inspiring job. So give them everything they need to continue.
Lastly, are NATO countries spending enough, do you think, on their defense budgets? They've stepped it up more recently, but do you think they need to go further?
I think they could. Absolutely.
All right.
Yes.
That is all I have for topics, but anything that we've missed that you would want to add?
I just want to add to everybody, my parents were conservative, and they raised me on traditional family values, that you respect your veterans, our elders, and the dignity of work. And actually, before he died, my dad, a lifelong Republican, he told me to step up and run because so much has been invested in me by this community. So that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm stepping up to return everything that's been invested in me. And I'm running to represent all of us. I don't care about your party, just it's people first. And it has been just such an honor to even run. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for what you do, Sean. Like this is, the free press is so important. It's so important. So even if you're tough on me, I appreciate your job and what you're doing. It's more important than ever. So thank you.
Thank you. Trisha Calvarese, the Democrat in CD4.
Thank you.
Thank you.